And a warm welcome to our distinguished guests, Puan Siti Kamaria Hamad Subki, our Managing Director and Trustee of Yayasan Hasanah, and Dr. Suraya Ismail, Director of Research from Khazanah Research Institute, Puan Hawati Abdul Hamid, Director of Research from Khazanah Research Institute, Puan Sharifah Nur Jomiza Syed Agil, Chief Financial Officer, Aditi Malhotra, Chief Impact Officer of Yayasan Hasanah. Esteemed guests, partners, and friends of Yayasan Hasanah. We are very glad that you could join us here today physically and virtually. My name is Natasha Nazmi, Senior Executive here under the Monitoring, Learning, Evaluation and Knowledge team. ILMUs are our knowledge sharing events that we host for our CSO partner, stakeholders, as well as members of the public on a range of relevant topics, led by sectoral experts and thought leaders. We believe that continuous learning is essential and that there should be no barriers to learning. So kindly note for this session will be recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. So today's agenda begins with introduction and setting the context by Dr. Suraya Ismail, Director of Research from Khazanah Research Institute, KRI. This will be followed by a presentation on the jointly published KRI and Hasanah Cash Transfer Discussion Paper by Putri Marjan Mergat Muzaffar, Research Associate from KRI. We will then continue with a panel discussion where we will explore how we can move from fragmented, charity-based models to comprehensive systems that uphold dignity and which foster long-term social justice and equity. Afterward, you will have a chance to ask questions during the Q&A session with the panelists. Lastly, please stay for light refreshment afterward. You won't want to miss it. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Suraya Ismail to set the context for our ILMU session, and following that, Putri Marjan Mergat Muzaffar to present on KRI and Hasanah Cash Transfer Discussion Paper.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam perpaduan dan salam Malaysia Madani. Thank you, Tasha, for a very good for introducing us in KRI. We're very happy and delighted today that this collaboration with Yayasan Hasanah has come to fruition and to a destiny that we never thought we could have arrived, which is for it to be actually accepted by the government as a policy. So I applaud both the team for such an exemplary collaboration take-up by the government. So we've just presented it to the Prime Minister yesterday. And it was accepted. I mean, it's not accepted whole, I mean, like not all 6, but at least one. So that's the starting point of actually doing more, yeah, Marjan? Sorry. So that is the KRI DNA. We do research, we look into the pressing issues of the nation, then we do research about it. Is it really the pressing issue of the nation? Then after that, we do primary data collection or literature research or even data from government agencies. And then we come up with the conclusion, oh, yep, we do have a problem. And then we start doing the research. This is where collaboration happens. And after that, we then propose these policy options based on the research that we've done. And the outcome is 50-50 lah kan. Sometimes it's been accepted, sometimes it's not. But we're very happy and very delighted today that the collaboration between Yayasan Hasanah and KRI has materialized into a policy take-up by the government. Tepuklah sekali lagi. Sorry lah, too much, but we're just so happy because this is the first collaboration. I'd like to I don't want to go into the content of this paper sangat, but more of the process of how it started, and as well as inviting all the others. If you want to do research with Marjan and KRI, please come forward, and we'll be more than delighted to do something together, because that is the topic of the day, where collaboration will bring more thinking to the table, more people thinking about the same thing that you're passionate about. And this will always bring very good output. So the original team, yeah, Aditi, Anita, not here now, Eng Ning, Anna, and from the KRI is Jarod, for going off for his PhD, has gone off. Shirin on maternity leave, Adam there back. Of course, special mention to Howard for always guiding the team, because this came from her social protection report. So this is something that we really like to elaborate on, which is social protection. And when we first started this, I remembered with Aditi and Anita, it's like, shall we do a discussion paper? Shall we do a report? What is the weight of this report? What is the weight of this research? And mind you, that process in and of itself is very important, because then how do you then situate a very delicate topic to a report in order for it to be palatable to the government of the day? Also, what is the angle that we should bring in order for traction, for better traction? So there is a lot of thinking and consideration done at the creation of this paper and the ideation of this paper, which I really want to say thank you to the team in Yayasan Hasanah for making that journey with us. So I we really appreciate that. And to all, what is the role of Yayasan Hasanah in this KRI, Yayasan Hasanah endeavour? Of course, for us, we do research, kan? And we try our best to make the best of it. But what was really value-adding from YH was that there was a network of NGOs that they have built their knowledge on ILMU, and we could tap into it. We've never done this work where we look into civil society, grant giving, but we can tap into their expertise. And together we come up with something academic as well as plausible to be implemented. And they also went through our report and saying, ini tak boleh jalan ni, ini okay, ini tak okay. But that brings it down to the level of execution, which we really, really appreciate. And this thing about how practice also is important to the way we do things in KRI. I mean, we have really learned a lot about how good practice and what are the mechanism for it, as well as what ought to be looked into as well in creating that ecosystem of collaboration and coordination. Again, we have learned so much from Yayasan Hasanah, and we hope that today's discussion or today's work will continue to bring more policy options, but more importantly, that we continue to work together for the betterment of Malaysians. With that, I think I will end this brief introduction, because I think Marjan will be going through the whole presentation, and I don't want to spoil her presentation too much, because they have worked so hard for this, and I think that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yayasan Hasanah.
Okay, thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera to everyone. Thank you so much for attending this event, and I appreciate any receptions, any questions, but not too hard ones after the event. And feel free to like Dr. Suraya said, we are researchers, we do like data, so if you want to come, we want to like collaborate, we welcome for you to reach out to KRI. Okay, so basically for our paper, we have, what we did, we had like a 4-section. We also looked at like international experience, then we looked at Malaysia experience, but for this presentation, we just want to focus on this segment. So basically, before I go into why we actually use cash transfers, so maybe just a brief introduction. So what exactly are cash transfers? So as the name implies, it means that when you give money, so you give cash. So you don't have to like contribute like your normal EPF, for example. So as long as you get cash, then you don't have to work for it, then it's considered as cash transfers. So why exactly do we have cash transfers? So the argument is very simple. So when we talk about like poverty, for example, you think poverty can be multidimensional. It could be in terms of like health, or it could be in terms of like you have poor living conditions. But usually the central to the problem is because of a lack of income. Hence why when you have cash, it can be used for multiple purposes. You can use to further your education. You can start businesses. So many different angles. So broadly, you can talk about cash transfers for 4 reasons. So it could be because of like social protection and security. So for example, the big government programs like Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah. It could also be because of development and growth. So for example, a government has like a development policy. They want to have more efforts to strengthen education, for example. So you give like scholarships and whatnot. It could be because of human capital and social mobility. So we cannot choose our parents. So sometimes for kids, for example, in poor households, so that is their way for them to escape that intergenerational poverty cycle. And lastly, because of another reason why we have cash transfers is because of like propagating rights, equity, and fairness. So meaning it's a way for us to have redistributive policies. So from taxation, you get from the better off, and then you distribute to those who are lesser off. Okay, so in our paper, we went through like the whole cycle of cash transfers, which I'm not going to go into detail. But basically, when you think of cash transfers, you may think like, oh, just bagi duit. But actually, no, it's a lot of things, a lot of thought process goes behind it. So the moment when you design the program in the first place. So what exactly is your objective? So depending on your objective, you may design the cash transfer very differently. So for example, when you have a disaster, so the way you might want to think, oh, okay, I want a cash transfer yang secepat mungkin boleh sampai ke orang tu. So you want to give like very quick, immediate. You may not want to set your targeting mechanism to be too complex. You just want to make sure that your assistance reach on the ground fast. Versus more long-term strategic cash transfers, or for example, JKM, Jabatan Kemajikan Masyarakat, they have different programs. So you have programs for disabled, for children, for elderly, so all with very different objectives. So of course, again, so all this, when we read the literature, there's a lot of debates. So in terms of how exactly do you want to provide your cash transfers? So whether you want to give direct cash, you want to give through e-wallet. So every little step in designing your programs has its pros and cons. So this is something that we read and we discover, especially when we looked at international studies, for example. So what may work in one country may not work in another country, and it really depends on your country's capacity to administer those programs. Okay, so, sorry, just, oops, I don't know how to go back. Okay, sorry, so just a last one, sorry. So, another thing I wanted to speak about is when you talk about cash transfers, in the end, the final step is the graduation or exit policy is something that we don't normally talk about. So throughout your whole life cycle of a cash transfer, so at the moment you design, and then you distribute, and then you monitor and manage, meaning you want to make sure that whether your transfers is effective or not, whether or not it's the beneficiaries find it useful or they find it hard to get the program. So it is something that we have to consider. And then lastly, whether or not you have an exit strategy. So whether you plan for your beneficiaries to maintain in the program, or the program actually empowers them for them to actually exit the program in the end. Okay, so now next. Okay, so basically this is like a general framework of the social protection system in Malaysia. So you have 3 pillars. So social assistance, social insurance programs, and employer liability schemes, as well as active labor market policies. So when we talk about cash transfers, they would situate in the first pillar, which is social assistance programs. Under this pillar, of course, you have so many other things, for example, your subsidies, in-kind transfers, and the like. But for today, we just want to focus on this because this is quite a big chunk of Malaysia's social protection spending. So for example, if you look back for Malaysia, back into the last 2 decades, we see that the government has spent around 597.6 billion ringgit on social assistance and subsidies since 2000. So you can see from the graph on the left, so it has really spiked up, especially in the last, beyond post-COVID, so 21, 22, 23. And we can see, even when we compare back in 2000 and 2023, we can see the percentage, the share of how much has gone into social assistance and subsidies has increased from 8.5% all the way to 21.4%. But what we are seeing now, especially in the last few years since 2021, even though our spending on social assistance and subsidies have increased, a lot of the spending has gone into subsidies. So subsidies is a whole host of issues. When you think about subsidies, especially, for example, fuel subsidies, there are criticisms of it being regressive, you know, benefiting more of those in the higher income. So this is something that we need to think further whether or not we want to continue on this path of focusing on subsidies or directing it more towards assistance. So again, we got this data from MOF. Thank you very much for them for sharing the, so MOF has shared with us the detailed data of the number of programs that they have along with the spending. So back from 2012 all the way to 2020. And what we do see is that there is an increase in the number of programs. So the chart on your left would show you how much the program has increased, but the chart in the middle shows you that despite the increase in programs, the spending has not really catch up to the number of programs. So if you, a simple math will tell you that the average expenditure per program would have a decline. So meaning we want to, it makes us think about whether or not the programs, the increasing number of programs is truly effective or not in delivering the assistance to those that need it. So basically these are the key findings. Just to share with you, so what we did for our research is we contacted multiple government agencies, federal as well as state agencies, and then with the help of Yayasan Hasanah, we also reach out to like private sector companies as well as NGOs to get their feedback on what exactly are the programs that they have, what are the challenges that they face, and these are what we found. So number one, we saw that there's quite a lot of cash transfer programs available out there. So when we did the study, we wanted to see between 2018 to 2022 because we want to see the difference before and after COVID. So within that span of 5 years, there was about 72 federal cash transfer programs alone across ministries, and across state agencies, there was around 260 active state cash transfer programs. So this is quite, and when we found this, we also see there's a lot of like different, so imagine many agencies, so every agency would have their own database, and these databases that has this beneficiary information may not necessarily talk to each other. So because the way that the system is fragmented, so it increases the risk of overlaps. And because, so it increases the risk of overlaps. And number two, so every program has their own demographic target and objectives, so signifying overlaps. So for example, when we look at federal programs alone, around 30 plus just focus on bantuan umum, so general cash transfer programs. For state programs, it was about 130 plus or so. So it's still quite just for general. And then the second bit, we saw a lot on education, a lot on keusahawanan, entrepreneurship. So and then number three, so many cash transfer programs are poverty or B40 targeted. But again, because to go to my next point, because the information on cash transfer is a bit limited, so you're not exactly clear when you talk about like B40, are you talking about the state threshold, are you talking about the poverty threshold? So a lot of it is can be improved. Yeah, and what we do see is that some eligibility criteria do not fully account for household demographic and local cost of living. So for example, a program, usually it will be federal programs, so they would use the national B40 threshold or the national poverty line income threshold, which may not necessarily suit the conditions of a state, for example. So there's quite a bit of a mismatch there. And then number four, we do see quite a high prevalence of one-off programs. Maksudnya bila ada masalah, ada program. So it's a very reactionary approach to social protection. So in an ideal world, if you have a proactive sort of like social protection system, you can just use your existing program and then you expand it, whether you expand the coverage or you increase the amount, but you don't have to introduce a new program every time there's an issue going on. So, yeah. Sorry, so for number 5, again, I wanted to emphasize this point. So information on cash transfer is limited. What we do see is that transparency of programs, the information available online, is not exactly the same throughout. So for some, we had to call, we had to write letters, we wanted more information on the program. So for us, even carrying the KRI name, it's quite difficult to get the information. So imagine you put yourself in the beneficiary's shoe, for example. So if you're someone in need and you're down on luck, you're unemployed, you don't have income, and you want that assistance. But it's quite hard for you to go to the program. One thing, because of the multiple agencies, you don't even know where to start. Do I go to MOF? Do I go to JKM? So it's very difficult from a beneficiary's point of view because you don't have like a one place to go. And number 6, lastly, what we do observe is there is insufficient monitoring and evaluation of programs. So when we talk about monitoring and evaluation, we want to know like how effective has your program been? So has it managed to achieve the original objective? So meaning empowerment ataupun improving education. What is usually reported is the number of recipients and how much money is spent, which is not really a way of, it's not really impact per se, it's more of an output rather than an impact. Okay, so now I want to talk a bit about the policy implications, maybe just highlighting a few. But what we do see is that orang Malaysia ni baik. So everyone wants to do something and everyone wants to play a part, do their role, which is very good. But what we want to see further in the future is a closer coordination between all these entities. So we want to have a close coordination between those channeling social assistance. What we see when we talk about to the CSOs and we talk to the state governments, what they do, while they don't have the scale as a federal government, for example, but what they do have is the closer proximity on the ground. So for example, in terms of whenever there's a disaster, they tak perlu nak tunggu birokrat ke apa ke, they can just like, birokrasi ke apa, they can just go straight on the ground and deliver the assistance versus bigger government, which takes a bit more time for them to settle and channel the assistance. Number 3, so another thing that we encourage is to have a thorough and periodic review of programs. So for example, what program might be needed back in 2021 might not be needed in 2022, or if there is an overlap, so perhaps there is room for consolidation, which is something that we can and should do. Number 4 and number 5 is basically quite close to each other. So embarking on a national social protection registry, as well as having a one-stop center for information and registration. So basically finding a way to actually consolidate or at least integrate all this beneficiary information at one place. So you don't necessarily have to have one database. It could be a talking database to each other, but having like a unique ID to actually link all this database together, but at least a place where all these agencies can have access and to channel their assistance more efficiently. So same with one-stop center. So having like a place for beneficiaries to actually go to, senang lah untuk diorang juga. Yeah. Okay, and of course, I think if a lot here are practitioners, so I think they know this better than I do. So on administering cash transfers. So number 1 is to actually have that monitoring, evaluation and reporting procedure in place when you do your programs. So to check whether or not your program is actually very helpful. Just to give you one example. So for example, in other countries, what they usually say is it's better to give programs to the mother compared to the father because the mother would better spend it on families. But there's also a study saying that it actually increases the mother's exposure to domestic abuse because now she holds the money. But we don't know what is the case for Malaysia, and you can only know that if you do your monitoring, evaluation, getting that feedback mechanism in place. Yeah, and number 2, again, this one, basically, when you do your programs, make sure to cater it to local conditions. And number 3, so ensuring any graduation or exit strategy for programs are sustainable. So basically this means that when you have a program and you give it to your participants, to ensure that your participants, once they exit the program, they are actually equipped to exit in the first place, and not just, so if your cut-off is like, let's say for example 2,500 ringgit, gaji dia naik ke 2,600 ringgit, so out you go the program. But actually no, you're not really equipped to be out of the program. So it is something that we should incorporate when we are designing cash transfers. So with that, I end my presentation and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you, Marjan, for the presentation on the cash transfer discussion paper. So today, we are privileged to have a distinguished panel representing viewpoints with varied experience in their respective fields. We will be spending the next 45 minutes in the panel discussion, after which we will have Q&A session. To our virtual audience, feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions that you may have. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our moderator for today, Anna Teo, Senior Manager, Knowledge from Yayasan Hasanah, Monitoring, Learning, Evaluation and Knowledge Team, together with our panelists to the stage to continue with the panel discussion. Oh, no worries. A bit of a fix. Come. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Sorry, everyone. On. Okay. It's the first time we are trying to be a bit. Come, can I have my panelists on the stage with me? Perhaps we'll move this a little. Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. And thank you again, Marjan, for the presentation. And thank you, Dr. Suraya, as well. It's such an important piece of research, isn't it? And I actually have it here with me with all my notes that I've made. But for those in the audience, you will be able to read the research online as well. So we will be flashing the QR code. So do some time on it. Okay. So once again, a very good afternoon to our audiences here with us, as well as those joining us online. I've been informed that we have about 80 plus who have registered to join us online. So thank you once again for making the time to join us. And as we have seen in the presentation this afternoon, Malaysia's number of social assistance programs has only increased over the past decade. And these programs are implemented by multiple ministries, agencies, NGOs, and it points to potential overlaps, inclusion and exclusion errors, as well as leakages. So for today, we want to delve deeper into this topic of cash transfers in terms of specifically the Malaysian experience. For us, in the social justice sector, at the center of our work is the value of human dignity. And that is what we have centered this ILMU session around today, emphasizing that everyone deserves the same level of reverence and protection. Malaysia has made progress towards becoming a high-income nation, but its social assistance programs remains administratively challenging.
And this year, the Economic Outlook Report by the Ministry of Finance has emphasized the need for our cash transfer programs to be based around development programs that are more comprehensive, shifting away from charity-based models. And these will actually address the underlying vulnerabilities of the rakyat in order to raise our standards of living. So this indeed points to the need for a more comprehensive cash transfer and social protection system that promotes inclusive growth with sound impact measurement, methodology, and accountability as we move towards justice-based frameworks. Okay, let me just shift it a little bit. Okay. So for today, ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to have with us a distinguished panel of speakers, experts and practitioners in their own rights to share their knowledge with us. So let me begin by introducing the speakers. On my left, we have Shafina Sufhaimi, Senior Manager of My Kasih Foundation, a non-profit organization established to feed the poor and rehabilitate them through education and skills training for better income generation. Shafina oversees the program management, donor relations, and fundraising. Puan Adiba is Chief Assistant Senior Director at the Policy and International Relations Division of the Social Welfare Department, or JKM. Puan Adiba leads the work on drafting the Social Work Profession Bill and is also responsible as the Parliamentary Secretariat for JKM. Then we have Marjan, Research Associate at the Khazanah Research Institute. She holds a Master's in Public Policy from University College London and a Bachelor of Economics from Multimedia University. Throughout her time at the Institute, Marjan has worked in research areas that includes social protection, housing policies, health inequalities, and she's currently focused on the care economy. And last but not least, we have Hasbi Zuraiha, Senior Manager at Hasanah, who oversees the implementation of strategy and advocacy under the Community Development Impact Area, as well as manages the humanitarian disaster relief projects. Hasbi has also implemented programs for Hasanah's GDRN, which stands for GLC Demi Rakyat dan Negara, and her experience spans across various NGOs and SEs focused on community development programs across Malaysia. Okay, so if I may start with an opening question to all our panelists, perhaps going from left to right. Well. Can you share on the cash transfer landscape in Malaysia over the years? What has been one turning point for you in your work and journey?
Okay, so I will share from the Maikase standpoint perspective actually, because we are a private non-profit, very much dependent on the funds we receive to do the work that we do on the ground. As far as the 13 years that I've been with Maikase Foundation, I suppose the journey has grown from exploring partnerships with corporates and executing their CSR programs with them, and diversifying those partnerships, so beyond corporates, but also working with other foundations and other CSOs, other non-profits, to basically leverage on each other's strengths and support each other's work to achieve that efficacy and efficiency in mobilizing very limited resources, in our case it would be funding, to provide assistance to the targeted groups. So it's been a truly enriching process, because with the growth of partnerships and the different sort of programs that we could implement, we could then experience more learnings and come up with solutions together in consultation with multiple stakeholders, not just the corporates and other CSOs, but also government agencies and those with the network and the machinery to mobilize resources. So it's been, in terms of the Maikase delivery of assistance, in terms of that sort of landscape, with partnerships, we were able to grow our experience and our outreach.
Thank you, Shafinas. What about you, Puan Adiba?
I think from JKM side, Social Welfare Department, I think we are more focusing on like humanitarian touch to our clients, because I do believe in Service and Social Welfare Department, how to touch with the client is the most important thing, rather than like when we talk about cash transfer, it's only like dollar and cents. But sometimes on somewhere we are lacking like how to help people genuinely. Before this, like where we do case management with our client, regardless they are poor, they are like the disaster victims, or they are PWDs. One important thing that we need to handle the case, to handle our client, is how to manage the, or to intervene their problem for helping them. Yeah, I think in social welfare department, all we are focusing on social work practice to do the case management, to help our client to become more and more sejahtera and happy in their life. Yeah, that's the most in social welfare.
Thank you, Puan Habibah. Over to you, Marjan.
Yeah.
You'd like to pass? Okay.
Yeah, eager to pass to Hasbi, but so I guess for my personal turning point is when doing that social protection report. So back in 2021, when what we did was focusing on social security. So we looked at for children, working age, and the elderly. So what are the available social assistance and social security programs? And what we found is that a lot of the programs are very centered on the bottom left, which is the poor, the less well off, and a lot of the programs benefit the top right, so meaning those that are well off. So a lot of our programs, let's say for example, just to give an example for children, so we have if you are from a poor, less well off household, you have bantuan kanak-kanak. Versus if you're a better off household, you can actually benefit from a lot of tax relief programs. So for example, SSPN, childcare. But what we do see is that those in the middle, or what we call what we term as the missing middle, so they are left off, they are left out, so excluded from these programs. So at that time, I was thinking like, is that a common thing that is happening for all the programs across? So, and then we see all because at that time we were focusing a lot on federal programs, and we see the proliferation of programs available. So programs makin meningkat, tapi the expenditure may not necessarily rise in tandem. So hence why we wanted to focus, let's just focus on cash transfer programs, and just to see what's the situation there like. Hence, then we found this whole interesting findings. So I'll pass to Hasbi.
I think in terms of cash transfer landscape, in terms of my observation from as recent as 2010s, now I think in general we are more open in terms of considering cash transfer that is beyond government assistance. Because like previously, even in 2010s, we have BREAM and whatnot, but it was pretty much on government initiative. But now, fast forward to now, I think the other sectors, like the private sectors, the CSOs are more open to providing cash transfers as the community development strategy or initiative for the community, whereas in 2010, when it was only more on the government side, and then on the government side also it was more towards a one-off of the year, for example. It's not a consistently consistent cash aid throughout the year. That even back in 2014, when a book by Rutger Bregman, Utopia for Release, was considered radical, because proposed the book proposed universal basic income, which was at that time was controversial, or rather people thought that that's not something that is what we should be focusing on. So yeah, I think in terms of landscape, just from my lens, 2010 until now, I think we are now starting to really talk about cash transfers more seriously. I think even on the government side, we are considering things. I don't know if, we are considering things like reconsidering fuel subsidy and channeling that to the needy. So those kind of conversation, I think wouldn't have been such back then, but now I hope that we are moving towards more of these types of support.
Thank you, Hasbi. Yes, personally, I also have noticed many more news in the zeitgeist about cash transfers, social assistance, and direct supplementary programs as well. Wanted to go back to Shafinas. You've mentioned that over the years, the last 13 years or so, there have been many learnings, and in terms of leveraging on those learnings and mobilizing support. Can you share more with us about MyKasih's technology-driven welfare distribution method in bringing impact to B40 households?
We wanted to design a program in a way that we could provide the beneficiary with an opportunity to decide for themselves what they would need, and to give them that freedom of choice and the dignity of choosing what they need for their families. But at the same time, also to provide our donors, our funders, the assurance that their funds are being used well and for their intended purposes. So the technology that you're referring to is the MyCard technology. So every Malaysian citizen has a MyCard. And the MyCard has been converted into a payment instrument. So basically, it's essentially used as a payment card. With the food aid program that we're doing for families, for B40 households, we've enabled them to use their IC as a payment card. So they will visit the retail outlet within the neighborhood, shop for whatever they need within an approved set of product categories, and pay for them using donors' funds that are then actually channeled through the MyCard account. So in a sense, it was user-friendly. It was designed to be user-friendly, accessible to the recipient anytime because it's in their wallet, as it were. Their MyCard's always with them. And the way they pay for it is at the same cashier counter at the retail outlet. So it is like a usual shopping outing for them. It's at a neighborhood retail outlet that's familiar to them. And they shop for what they need when they need it. So it's at their convenience as well. So that gives them the flexibility of deciding for that for their families. At the same time, it gives us the assurance when we do our monitoring reports, our fund utilization reports for donors. So over the years, with this technology, with this delivery mechanism, we're able to go to more partners and say, look, if you are aligned with our social objectives, would like to support families, we can do this. So Yayasan Hasanah was also one of our funders very early then, back in 2012, 2013, and was then looking into all this data that we were gathering from your cohort of beneficiaries and looking at how they're shopping, what they're spending on, and so on. And we were actually part of KRI's reports, the State of the Households report back then. So with us, I think the limitation, because it's technology, because everything's automated, the effort it takes to onboard 50 families, 50,000 families, 500,000 families, actually the same because of that. And so we then went on a big drive to basically offer this service of, would you like to support families? Would you like us to transfer, goodwill through the MyCard of these families and allow them to shop for what they need? So we then, hence the donor management relations and program execution. As many stakeholders have wanted to support families, we will then partner with them to do exactly that. So we're basically a delivery partner to anyone who wants to support families with food assistance. Yeah.
Thank you, Shafinas. And it's very interesting to hear. It's aligned to what Marjan had presented earlier about monitoring and also accountability towards the funders, which is very important, especially as you scale and also to meet the needs of the people in households as well. Speaking of meeting the needs of households, next question to Puan Adiba. Can you share some of JKM's latest strategies in cash transfer programming in meeting the needs of the most vulnerable populations?
In JKM, when the people in need come to JKM, so we have like 12 or 13 schemes for under the JKM program. And what we do is to fulfill what their basic needs as a social support tools and also like rehabilitation tools. The financial aids that we're giving them is like tools or a mechanism to help them actually. And this program, we have so many category, and I think that the latest is in 2021. There is in the budget we have increased some of the program, the amount, and the financial assistance scheme that we provide is like it's only a temporary basis as a rehabilitation tools. And we also noticed that our recipient, they have like two major categories where they are productive or non-productive. And when we know that when we're giving the financial aids, some of the category of the recipient is using that as a survival needs for them, and not as an income security like others. So actually, when we try to look at the trend, how they are spending the money, and actually it's more like for survivals. Yeah. And if I can share with you all here the statistic of JCAM recipients as August 2024, there are like 540,000 beneficiaries, and the spend or allocation that we spend from January to August 2024 is more or less like 1.7 billion for this recipient. And from the trend that we see that the highest number of cases is the recipients in Bantuan Warga Emas for senior citizens, and the second highest is for disabled person who are incapable of work, 100,000 over. So the trend shows that the first, the highest and the second highest is like the groups that vulnerable groups that really non-productive, if you can say. Yeah. So I think we need to have some program that really customized to our types of clients so that we can give the more benefits for them. Yeah.
Thank you, Pranadipa. It is heartbreaking to hear of some families just relying on these to survive, indeed, and there is a lot of needs in the community. Perhaps the next question to Hasbi on the community-based approach, or also known as CBA. Can you share more on how Hasanah channels aid through the CBA, and how does this contribute towards change in the community?
I think maybe I'll start with the general strategy in terms of how Hasanah plays a role in terms of providing aid to communities. We do from providing cash aid and food aid for humanitarian disaster as humanitarian disaster relief. So in terms of like banjir of a flood, and even during the pandemic, a lot of the programs were focused on food aid and there's even cash aid. When it comes to community development, I think we're aligned with my Kase in the sense where we want to provide interventions that are like menyantuni the community, like provide dignity to the community. So this has derived from a more community needs, community needs informed through our partners. And this has covered from giving allowances in programs in entrepreneurship, for example, or micro grant for the entrepreneurs, or the micro entrepreneurs. It has also extend to stipends for employment program where in matching youth to jobs while they're learning and when they're learning the skills that they need for the particular job, job matching and job placement, they are also provided stipend to kind of support, I guess, to kind of compensate on their opportunity cost while they're learning those skills. So these are some of the examples that Hasanah has supported through our partners, including Maikase. We also worked together with Maikase for Sumbangan Asas Rahmah since it started with Prihatin Kasih in during COVID in 2021, and then 22 we started off the Sumbangan Asas Rahmah. Yeah, that's pretty much in terms of what we have supported and funded. But I think there's definitely more opportunities for Hasanah to participate in this type of support, especially, for example, I think the stipend example is one that I think we can support more of when it comes to the whole overall ecosystem of TVET, for example, because there's initiatives in TVET, right, in terms of matching the jobs, ensuring that there's placement right after the job, but there's still quite low uptake in terms of the opportunity, and we feel maybe, or I personally feel that maybe it's mainly because they still need income in the few months, the short months that they are trying to gain these skills. So perhaps that is something we can continue or explore more of as well.
Thank you, Hasbi. I think that theme has come up quite a bit in some of our conversations as well. The opportunity cost of going to learn a new skill or to acquire something, and that takes up time which could have been used to earn income. So that has to be one of the considerations as well. Going back into the effectiveness of monitoring and evaluation, Marjan, earlier you've mentioned about the need for M&E, and I would have to do justice to my teammates in the MLA team by asking you this as well. I think you've covered a bit about how women in households, if they, evidence has shown that if they if they are the recipients itself, it causes some frictions in the home. Aside from that, can you actually elaborate for us a bit more on the importance of monitoring and evaluation in ensuring the success of cash transfer programs?
Before I go into monitoring and evaluation, I realized I didn't make that sorry, I'm so sorry for hijacking a bit. So one of the things that I do also want to highlight when we think about like the national social protection policy for Malaysia. So earlier I had like a chart showing the blues and the greens, but I realized I forgot to elaborate. But basically, what we wanted to highlight is the role. So we don't want the policies to just have like a charity-based approach. So bila orang susah ada kita bagi. So we want a bit more of a forward-thinking sort of strategy. So because of that, what we want to highlight is the government should be in charge of providing the social protection floor. So here, floor means providing that basic security. So it could be in terms of housing, it could be income, it could be education. So kita selalu dengar like providing that floor, providing the lantai. So that is and it should be the government's role. So how all these other, we see a lot of players, Maikase, like private sector, for example. So everyone has their own role. So meaning how they could come in is by complementing and supplementing that available floor in the first place. This private sector and private sector and third sector shouldn't be the one responsible of providing that floor because they don't have the skill. So they don't necessarily have the presence everywhere. But what they can do is help the government. So because they're closer on the ground, get people on the ground, bring it back to the government. So they could be involved in. So they will be part of that bigger social protection database or registry or whatever that is. Yeah. So on monitoring, learning and evaluation, yes. So what we see lacking is that transparency in terms of what exactly happens to the beneficiaries once you provide that program. So whether or not our program is you know, there's always this like stigma where bila program je you have to have like a ceremony, like a salam, and then orang tu bagi. But what happens once the program is over, whether or not the program is actually beneficial? So if you look at like other countries, for example, so they do like a lot of studies. So it's not just a short term. So it could be in terms of like students punya grades. I'm sure my Kasih has like a lot of records on that. So but in terms of long term as well. So when we give programs, what happens? I'll just pick a case from Malawi, for example. So they monitored adolescent girls who receive cash transfer programs. So it's not just diorang yang menerima manfaat. So even once they have children, so even their children, they do see that benefit where the children or recipients, their height, for example, is better than those of families who are non-recipients. So, but again, all these things, cash transfers are very complex, and it really depends on the program design. But you can only know it's effective if you monitor in the first place. So yes.
Thank you, Marjan. Speaking of more holistic programs, next question to Shafinas. Can you share some real-life examples of how the combination of cash transfer programs in tandem with other tools such as financial literacy workshops and capacity building initiatives helps to tackle poverty more holistically?
Okay, so our entry point in communities, of course, is we fall under conditional cash transfers because our assistance are tied to food for the household. But at the same time, our food aid program spans a year at minimum. So within that 1 year, we would then expose or provide opportunities for the beneficiaries to participate in financial literacy programs, skills training programs, basically participate in entrepreneurial activities. And I would say about maybe 40% of them would actually grab that opportunity and take that bold step to come out of the B40 category. It's hard for families within that 1 year to no longer be within a B40 category. Not everyone's ready for that mindset change because they've always been comfortable in the sense that it's scary to no longer be eligible for aid the next day, you know. So once you start owning a business, once you start putting your products on Shopee, once you've got a label, once you've got a name out there, and you start earning income, and then you've got to start paying taxes, and then you're in the LHDN database, you are now being monitored, and then after that, you're no longer B40. So that's a very scary jump for some of the beneficiaries who have been bold enough to take that step. So while they are on our food aid program and given the assurance that there will always be food on the table while you are pursuing these upskilling activities, there is also a lot of counseling and guidance that needs to be given once they're no longer eligible for support, once they graduate from the program. So I think the graduation of the program is really important and to prepare them for that. But it's not a 1 year thing. In our experience, for this sort of change to happen and for it to remain quite sustainable is anywhere between 5 to 10 years. So the communities that we've aided and held hands with them until they're now earning 7,000, 10,000 ringgit income consistently, these are the ones that have been with us for 5 to 10 years. Not as in terms of continuously receiving aid, they were receiving aid in the beginning, but then to just be comfortable to no longer be receiving aid so that they don't fall back into that category. They needed some coaching and handholding in that sense. So it is possible, but it is not a 1-2 year thing.
It's a very long-term,
it's a long-term thing.
long-term program, and
Yes.
counseling as well.
Yes,
basically.
they need a support group. Yeah, they need a support group.
In terms of reaching different groups of the community as well, we have mentioned programs such as Bantuan Warga Emas, Bantuan Kanak-kanak and Ilawan Pekerja Orang Kurang Upaya, PWD, so sorry. So Puan Adiba, JKM has been very pivotal in delivering cash assistance to various vulnerable groups who have been assisted through the delivery of such programs. How do you think Malaysia can assure that its cash transfer programs are inclusive to continue reaching these marginalized groups, including such as women, the elderly, and persons with disabilities?
I think before this, our financial assistance program is really targeted, and it's only by application and be processed. If they fulfill the criteria, then they will receive the financial assistance. But like my boss said, social protection needs to be prioritized, integrated, and rationalized for Malaysia. And we don't need more and more social protection scheme, but only number of workable programs. That what we are thinking. And when we do with work with community, work with individual in need, and also vulnerable group, what we need is like in social work practice, we do believe that social worker or the case worker have to do like the referral. Yeah, like when case worker, they propose the implementation of case management system, they will know where to help, where to channel the client to get help. So that's the role of the case worker. And I think another way that we are promoting in Ministry of Women is the Talian Kasih 15999. I think that's the simple number to remember. Whatever problem or any social problem that you are facing, whether it's abuse cases or being in need or whatever as, problem you are facing, we are really encouraged to call this number. I think we want to go digital, but I think the readiness of our recipient is the one that we are thinking. Do they have a cell phone? Maybe in very remote area, they don't have this all the internet and whatnot, but at least telephone and they can reach out. So the hotline number 1599. And we also promoting that community reach out program. Some of our JKM officer are going to like, before this we have a program Cari, Search and Bantu. So we go inside the kampung, or we go to the very remote area, sometimes by boat and in land, especially in Sabah and Sarawak. So it's really hard to tunggu mereka the office, so we go to reach out, so reach program. But I think it's a very limited time for us, because like you all know, JKM, we Monday to Wednesday, Friday, there's a lot of cases are coming, but we do implement community reach out program. And another one, we have JKM volunteers, and we do encourage more and more volunteers to refer the cases to us. And also like community involvement, be proactive, so that we also work with the MP's office, ADUN office, in reaching out our target group. And also for in the documentation side, we also look for to review our SOP or our guideline for the financial assistance guideline, so that we want to improve our service, and maybe we want to explore more, not only just wait at the counter and wait for the people to come to visit us, but we are thinking another creative way to reaching out. But currently, we are encourage people to call, and even if you're going to our website, they can download the form and then send to our office or email to us. So that's the way that we are promoting more and more people to get help.
To get help and to be more inclusive. And that also ties into the drafting of the social work profession bill, right? To recognize.
Way forward, we are looking at how to help people in needs. It's not only by dollar and cent, but another thing is to do the social worker, or after we have the bill, currently the Ministry of Women, Family, Community Development, we are drafting the bill, social profession bill, and currently it's only JKM officer is doing doing the job as social work. But after we have this social work profession bill, any registered social worker can do a referral cases, can entertain the client, can help the people. So it's being recognized as a profession, not only volunteers but social workers. So we hope they will pass the bill in the parliament coming soon. So we have
Coming
more and
soon.
more social workers to have, and the ratio will be good. Yeah, to have more people.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So you've also mentioned about digital tools and the readiness. In terms of that, maybe an open question to all of our panelists. What roles do you think digital platforms and technology play in this process?
I can respond first. JGM has introduced like a cashless program for our recipient somewhere in, I think, 2 years or 3 years back. But I think we are too eager to promote it without seeing or do the pilot project release to our recipient, whether they are ready or not to receive or to use the digital platform. But I think when we do, maybe next time, even to promote lesson learned from what we are conducting before, like the cashless, or to try another platform of helping them doing the digital platform. I think we have to like pilot or target for certain areas so that it within a small number, and then when they are ready, they are aware of it, how to use it, and then the program will be a success. So the lesson learned for my side lah.
Rollout and timing as well. Any of our other panelists have thoughts on digital
Yeah, so
platforms?
thank you. So on digital platforms, so before this, I spoke about having that one-stop center, so a place for people to access information on cash transfer. So it is something that we can do. So having that virtual platform, but at the same time, we do acknowledge that not everyone has access to internet. Some may not be equipped to actually access it online. So you still have to link it with physical infrastructure available. So for example, we have our UTC Urban Transformation Center and PKD, Pusat Community Desa. So perhaps it's not just you register online, but you can still go to all these physical places for them to register and go into the program. On the flip side of it, so on cash transfers, on delivering the programs through this digital system, so of course there are pros and cons. So for example, this is quite a big brother form of way of thinking lah, but one thing administrators of cash transfer love having through like e-wallet or like cashless, because they can actually monitor and see, are you spending on like, what I think what you're supposed to spend on. So that there is that sort of like mentality, you know, like, oh, I don't want you to spend on cigarettes or alcohol. I want you to spend on food, on diapers, on medicines. So you have that structure where you limit it. But on the other side, on the beneficiary's point of view, like Puan Adiba said, so we read the JKM, so they tried to give through cashless, but of course some people, for example, those with disability find it hard to access the program. So there needs to be like a thinking of like how exactly do you deliver, but making sure that it doesn't come at the expense of your beneficiaries, because at the end of the day, you don't want your beneficiary, orang yang memerlukan bantuan tu, cannot spend it on what they think is best for them. So just a quick sharing. So for example, when we did another study on PPR, so kita tengok orang PPR, like you think, oh okay, so they would go like sort of shopping malls and Tesco's, for example. But when they get their goods, they get from pasar malam. So how do you don't like, at that time, this was back during COVID. So at that time, you don't really like use QR, for example. So how exactly do you access those services when we had that COVID lockdown? So again, this requires a rethinking from the government side, from the cash transfer administrator side. How exactly do you create these programs to fit your beneficiaries' requirements, basically?
Shafinas.
I saw the time reminder, we've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to take those 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, I think just to follow Marjan's explanation, her explanation earlier, I think with the MyCASI experience, with the MyCard delivery mechanism, we've had an opportunity to test it out on 2 different occasions, when we had the pandemic and we had to do a swift mobilization of aid to families who were affected. also, during and right after Prihatin Kasih, when we were then doing Sumbangan Asas Rahmah Sara project, the first round, the database was predominantly from JKM ICU, and we had a significant number of the beneficiaries who are OKU. So for those who are able-bodied, they're able to go to the retail outlets and shop. So what we had to do is we had to tweak the program a little bit for those for the OKUs to then provide the assistance to their caregivers. They either the parent, if I'm not OKU, then it's the parent, the one who is able to do the shopping on behalf. So it's really difficult because you have different types of beneficiaries. You have the elderly who might not be tech savvy and afraid to also use technology because they might be scammed or something. They've got their own reasons for that. But they always have that fallback, which is their MyCard. And that is something physical that they can touch and use at the retail outlet with the things that they're buying for themselves. Also, with regards to digital readiness, with this year's SARA program, because of the size of the project, there's 500,000 beneficiaries we're reaching out to under this project and delivering monthly aid to them. It was nice to see that 1/5 of the beneficiaries are using an app. Basically, they all own smartphones, and half of those smartphones are Apple. So they're downloading, they're downloading the MyKasih app. You know, this is also linked to your BNPL paper as well. So, so they are actually using all these available platforms to actually look at, okay, through the app, this is how much balance I have in my MyCard account. I can go shopping now for my family. You know, because my MyCard balance shows I've got 200 ringgit or so. These are the participating retail outlets within my location. But if I balik kampung next month to Johor, or those are the other MyKasih partner retail outlets in Johor I could visit and still spend on. And then if I'm not able to do so, or if something happens, the beneficiary is moving away or has passed away, for example, then there is an opportunity for them to call us and also to see if the aid could be delivered then to the next of kin, for example. It is easier for outreach when everyone gets on board the digital platform, because one, it helps the beneficiary to have access to the aid faster, in a sense, and they are also in control of where and when they can do their shopping and so on. But it's also easier for us to monitor when they went shopping, what they spent on, and so on. So with them on board this program, and with the MyCard as the denominator, we're able to see whether they're actively spending, or if they haven't been shopping for the last 3 months, then it's time for us to go and check what's happening with them. Yeah, so I think we cannot escape digital. It's just a matter of those who can help through these means, let's work with them, and those who can't, let's carve a different strategy for them.
Thank you, Shafinas. So that's very good to see that there's actually a lot of avenues and flexibility with the use of technology. And what an interesting data point as well in terms of the OS that people use. I think a lot of the points that our panelists have brought up today points towards the need for coordination. So perhaps to close the panel, I will have this question on public-private partnerships and collaborations. So actually in the report, GDRN is being mentioned. So this question is to Hasbi. Can you tell us more about this model and its purpose, and how this can contribute to increase strategic collaborations and public-private partnerships in coordinating assistance?
Okay, perhaps I start with the definition of what GDRN is. GDRN previously, it's a loose coalition between GLCs, and started in around 2014 for disaster response, and it was kind of established with this loose coalition for better coordination between the GLC, better to reduce overlap in terms of the disaster relief or disaster response. And also in that sense, to reduce overlap and also reduce waste and optimize the funds that are available better. And in 2022, GDRN was rebranded to GLC Demi Rakyat dan Negara, where it expands expand not just for disaster, but also includes other pillars like education, sejahtera more in terms of like well-being, and still focusing on the kemanusiaan or the disaster, humanitarian disaster. So that's GDRN in definition wise. In terms of how the collaboration or the coordination can improve the landscape that like Marjan was mentioning earlier, that government should be focusing on the social protection floor because that's their volume, that they're able to do the volume, but it's still not going to be sufficient in terms of like how we have seen like SDR and Sarah, it's still very small amount every month. So there is a need for other collaboration with other organizations or the private sector such as GDRN to kind of fill in this gap to provide more in terms of either the programs, and within this program perhaps more cash support to give the community empowerment to decide on what is good for them. So hopefully through the GDRN or other organizations that is outside the government, are explore more to all these kind of solutions. Especially like Marjan also mentioned in the research that there's not enough monitoring, MNE, monitoring and evaluation in terms of the programs that has been implemented, but it also, we don't have enough programs that we to get data from, right? That's in terms of if we would talk about cash transfer, there's not enough programs for us to learn more. For example, unconditional program, unconditional cash transfer, right? How does that look like? We can theorize all we want in terms of like, okay, then they maybe use this for this, or we're worried about this, but there's still no data. So hopefully if people at GDRN experiment, the coalition experiment more and like create more social innovation avenue to test this thing, get more data, and then we can learn more when it comes to this landscape.
Yeah, so sharing knowledge and building upon another's experiences will bring us as a stronger as a whole sector, and also supporting the government as well. So thanks very much to the panel for this time. So we will now transition into the time of Q&A. For those in the audience here physically, if you have a question, just kindly raise your hand and my colleague will bring a mic to you. Four hands went up at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful discussion. It was very, very interesting to see each panelist's insights. I'd like to ask a question on how do we do monitoring and evaluation? Because as you know, poverty is not vacuous. It's because of context. And therefore, how do you even generalize from your MNE on what works or what doesn't? Thank you.
We put up our hands together and our questions are also linked to each other. Yeah, I appreciate we got really rich and diverse perspectives on the panel. Thank you for your sharing. And just, I guess, building on Dr. Sraya's question, Marjan also mentioned the value of MNE, but often, as Dr. Sraya said, it's very difficult. Sounds very easy, but when we have to do it, we have to break it down to what makes sense. It doesn't have to be data for the sake of data. So just wanted to hear from Shafina's, yours, and Adiba, your experience, what really is the feedback mechanism that you have with your target participants, and how often do you even take it back to either government agencies or funders to have a discussion to say, should we target more accurately? Are we really responding to the needs of what the Rakyat wants versus what we think they should be spending on? So I think just linked to Dr. Sraya's question.
Okay, maybe I'll start with me. My answer will be quite short, I think. We've got a call center, and when we started rolling out the government project, the SARA project, we had walk-ins, people coming to our office. We had people sending us emails and calling our call centers, and there are those, of course, who are wondering why they're not on the program, and those who are wondering whether they're on the program, and if they are, what can they do with this aid. So one of the things that we found interesting in terms of feedback was because of the conditions that were tied to the program, you're only allowed to spend on food, blah, 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 blah. So what we took on board was the kind of requests they were asking, like, could we buy medicines with this, over-the-counter medicines? Could I buy diapers for my children? So then we sort of had a little rating exercise. So the most feedback we got was from this sort of product categories, this sort of product categories, this sort of product categories. So that's why when SARA program kicked off this year, it expanded the products that the families are able to buy using their monthly allocation. So it took into account their feedback as well. The other feedback was, of course, on the kind of retail outlets that they could visit. So they didn't want just the big hypermarkets, that are more prevalent in towns, but also the mom and pop shops, the smaller kedai runcits that they're more familiar and more comfortable going. So we took that on board as well, and then went out to recruit those smaller mom and pop shops that could, stock up and also provide for these families in that particular locality. In terms of data, and now I remember why Anita was so granular when she looked at the first Prihatin Kasih. I was wondering, why is she working on a research paper or something? She was looking at the kind of the families that we had to reach out to, why we couldn't reach some of them, and their habits of changing phone numbers every few months. Once their prepaid cards have expired, they change phone numbers, we lose them from the system. Then we had to go on a witch hunt. We had to ask the Ketua Kampung, where's this family, and so on. So beyond the delivery mechanism, there was also just trying to reach these families that are in the database but not contactable. So our biggest feedback that we had to give back to the government when we ran this project was, we can't find these families, we can't reach them, so we need your help in that sense. But the other positive is, once the program rolled out, these families contacted us because they got our hotline and they said, I know I'm eligible because I checked online and I'm eligible, but so can I start shopping today? I'm like, yes, but we've got to update your details now because you are now using a new phone number, for example. So I think for as long as we're out there, we've got our phone numbers out there, our email, and then we've got a good relationship, because these beneficiaries will go anywhere from their pusat masyarakat, in their PPR, to Ikase. They will drive from Putrajaya to our office in Mutiara Damansara. They're trying to find where is the most efficient way for them to put their application across. So as long as we are able to provide them with a consistent narrative and give them clear directions on how to be onboarded, I think that would be helpful for them.
So for the monitoring and evaluation, I think in JKM, we work like a firefighting. I always use that term because if I can share with you the ratio, yeah. Currently, we have like 500,000 over financial aid recipients in JKM. And when I do the mapping for our social profession work bill, for the caseworker that is like in the district level, all over Malaysia, like the scheme is like 1,921 staff who dealing with solely for the financial assistance program. Another grades or another level of officer is dealing like for the child abuse, for the domestic violence cases, for the trafficking in person. So there are more and more tasks for another officer. But genuinely, I would rather, simple calculation, I want to know the ratio is like the number of the recipient, like 500 over, divide by 1,921 is like one caseworker to 282 clients. So it's really hard to get how to monitor, how to do the spirit of social work practice is not so-called being practiced, because we cannot reach out our client, the existing client, and more client is coming, and without consider like the bencana is coming, and before this pandemic, and another program that we have to conduct. So the first challenge, I think, for us to practice, really practice our social work practice is like the ratio. It's not being in the good ratio. If in child protection services, the ideal number is one caseworker to 30 children. But compared to poverty cases, I think is not, we have not conducted any ratios yet to these services. But I think for now it's 1 to 280. The monitoring element is definitely cannot. And if you, like throughout the year, it's considered that the caseworker cannot ambil cuti, cannot go for kursus, set the simple calculation that we can do. But what we do, what the source that we get is like our stakeholder, like our MPs, our other, the ketua kampung, they do memberitahu lah to us. But when we do the kaji semula, like before this, like 6 months or 1 year, we have to visit our client, the penerima bantuan. We go do home visit, and at least we kumpulkan mereka di dewan, and we say hi to our client. And the always thing that they mention is about ketakcukupan. Normally the amount that, yeah, when we see the PGK, it's like before this 1169, and it being after the revised, the PGK is dah naikkan 1189. And even the scheme of the rate of our bantuan, I think purata or the average like 500, whatever scheme it is, it's like 500. Definitely it's not cukup, yeah. But I think that's the peranan, as that's the role of the caseworker to help the client. Yeah, the JKM financial assistance is not like the pendapatan gantian for the client, but it's just a tools to help them. But that's the creativity the caseworker needs to help the client. Maybe they have to reach out to another agency to help the client. And yeah, that's the monitoring part. And also to take back points, how we respond to our client. That's when we direct practice in the field. I think JKM, we have conducted kajian keberkesanaan penerima bantuan in 2014 and 2017. And from that, we have picked up some points. That's why we propose to the government, so we increase the kadar of the bantuan. And currently, in order to enhance our social work practice, we do have supervision program. So there is a supervisor go and monitor to audit their social work practice. And like we have implemented it for 2 years. I think the take-up rate is good, and the more and more caseworker on the ground really practice what our philosophy of doing the casework. And another one is we also have the exit policy program. We call it 2-year exit program. And I found that this 2-year is very good because we have locked the certain numbers of caseworker and the group of people that they will help. Like for example, like one caseworker, they only monitor like 20 recipient that include in the 2-year program. So when we see that the small ratio, the more engagement with the caseworker and the clients, the timbal balance is very good. Although we cannot tamatkan the bantuan because the pendapatan is not getting like whatever we target, but at least they show some improvement. That show that ratios within the caseworker and the client is really important to give the good quality of service to help the people. And the latest one, we know that we cannot reach every people on the ground. Currently, we have we want to develop one index to show that before this, under the LPPKM, we have index kesejahteraan keluarga. So we come out, we propose under the RP, rolling plan program under RMK 12, index kesejahteraan penerima bantuan sosial. So we come up with this instrument so that we can administer, and the caseworker can do the index with the client, so that at least we know from which domain that show that very low score, Yeah, so that's the way forward we are looking to measure the index kesejahteraan penerima bantuan sosial. So from there we can take out which domain is being low, and that the way we want to help our client. That's the way forward.
Thank you, Panadipa. And any other questions from the floor before we go into the online audience questions? There are a few pending here. All right, over there, here as well.
Okay, hi. Thank you for the discussion, and I think a really good insight to understand like how this kind of program can help our vulnerable communities. But for my side, my question is, how effective, like what is our progress in terms of developing a long-term cash transfer program in inclusive social protections is one thing, and then another thing is, do you guys think that part of the struggle in the cash transfer effectiveness is part of these vulnerable groups are not really literate in terms of psychological stability, because in terms of like when they are living in those kind of environment, usually they struggle with mental health issues, and how does as this program can include the recovery program or intervention social connections to develop skills in terms of how they can manage life, manage their financials, and also growth throughout that. Yeah, that's all.
Maybe I can answer for the first question, and then the second would be those who are more in-depth experience. So for on the discussion on like long-term social protection, I think the government is they do have that acknowledgement, and they want to go towards it. But of course, when you talk about social protection, it's not just providing the assistance, but it's also the funding side. So it's both sides, and because again, when I showed my earlier slide, so it's not just assistance, it's your overall like pension scheme, your labor market policies, making sure that you have decent jobs of good, high quality jobs, good wages. So those are like a lot of like stronger reforms. So when we talk about like making, we want to expand our social assistance, for example. So we cannot just expand our assistance without having that necessary tax reforms behind it. Sorry, not just tax, but basically funding reforms in place. So I think there is a lot of discussion, and the government is moving towards the right direction, but we shall see on how they want to further it. But what we have seen, for example, in the last few years, we do see an expansion of Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah. So before this, back when it was first introduced as BRIM, in 2012, it just started as if I'm not mistaken, around 2.1 billion ringgit. So now, I think as of last year, it has expanded to 8 billion ringgit. So we do see the government acknowledging it's not just the B20, it's not just the B40, but it's a lot of people are in need of that assistance. But again, you cannot just provide assistance, you also have to strengthen your citizens. So a lot more discussions on like improving our wages, and I personally, I look forward to that discussion.
Thank you, Marjan. Puan Adiba, you want to say a
Maybe
few
I
words?
can respond a bit lah. Yeah. So the way forward or new direction for social assistance actually based on Economic Action Council EAC meeting actually in 22nd February of 2021. The government has set 6 new direction for social assistance. Yeah, but the first one is the meeting have concluded to have one the establishment the centralized agency for the monitoring and evaluating for social assistance program, and in order the end goal is to prevent the overlapping of the social assistance program like fragmented issues. So to tackle that issues, one centralized agency. The second one is to have the establishment of a centralized database for social assistance, number 2. And that is where my SPC, my Social Protection Council, is being set up to tackle these issues. And then the coordination with the setting of the new poverty line income, the PLI or the PGK. So the new model must in line with PGK, to suit with PGK. So to handle the issue ketak cukupan just now, what being said, like the PJK is a 1169, 1189, and your bantuan is 500, definitely cannot minimum for the PJK that we're fighting for. And then the fourth is about the conditional social assistance. So the new social assistance program or the new model of social assistance that the government want to develop, whichever the agency or the financial assistance provider or services, there must be some point of conditional social assistance program. So it's not we are giving for very long time. Maybe like we have like some sort like a contract, like 3 years or 5 years, but within that particular years, the caseworker really do help the clients. And we can have put a stop of it, and that's the exit policy. And the fifth one is the provision of social assistance with exit policy, so it's to support that, to build more independent society. And then to the last one is the prominent assistance application process. So to take up this issue, what EAC meeting have been decided in 2021, I think there is a collaborative initiative from UNDP and ICU JPM to collaborate to come up with this study about to look an inclusive social protection for all. So it's a Malaysian social protection project, and I think it's been conducted in April 2022, and I think it's end up April 2024, like 2 years project. So what is the current program? I'm not so sure because I'm not in the setting anymore. I moved to JKM now. Yeah. So after they finish the study, we will have National Social Protection Policy and the POA, Plan of Action, or the roadmap. And the pengkalan data is coming up, like pengkalan data perlindungan sosial. So we do the mapping, the social assistance mapping, the social insurance mapping in Malaysia, the labour market intervention program. So we consolidate under this, we call that PDPS. So we have a structure, Malaysia Social Protection Council, MySPC, and follow up the social protection policy and the roadmap or the action plan, and we have the pengkalan data. It's a complementary. It's just a matter of readiness towards that. We do have that setting in government. Yeah.
Thank you, Puan Adipa. We are going to take that question as well, but we have a related question from our audience online, and this is from Wafiuddin Ahmad. Speaking on pengkalan data, how does or will PADU contribute and play a role to better streamline the various cash transfer programs in our country?
Maybe I'm not in the capacity to answer the question, but I think I share my opinion. Like PADU is like my SPC. We have one database, PDPS, Pengkalan Data Perlindungan Sosial, where we do all the mapping, all the fragmented program. And PADU is like the main database for all Malaysian.
YH. I just have 2 questions. One is on cash transfer delivery program. How is it different between Semenanjung, Malaysia and Sabah and Sarawak? Or is it no difference at all in terms of the delivery of the cash transfers? And number 2, since it's a budget season, okay, so what will be your wish list for the upcoming budget for the cash transfers? Thank you.
Okay. Do you have someone you would like to address the question to, or we keep it open?
For the second one, I think it's for all.
Christmas
But
wish
for
list.
the first one, I don't know, probably from Shafinas and from JKM can answer that.
Okay, so for our experience on doing cash transfers in Sabah and Sarawak, at the moment, we are doing it based on corporate CSR for Sabah Sarawak. But if the Sumbangan Asas Rahmah program is to expand to include the MyCard delivery mechanism for Sabah Sarawak and Labuan, we should be able to. It's no problem because the families today are still shopping for their groceries somewhere. So it's a matter of us putting in our cashless infrastructure at those shops to just enable them to shop for what they need. It's the same shop they go to every other day. And if it's already there, that's the shop that we will recruit. So I think an expansion of the SARA program through the MyCard to Sabah Sarawak Labuan is not a problem. The second one on wish list. Okay, if My Kasih Foundation had a Christmas wish list, We've got the technology and we are happy to share it with everybody. So when I say everybody is whether corporates want to do their CSR program and leverage on this delivery mechanism, other foundations, I mean, we're already working with Khazanah, Yayasan Hasanah, with Sarah, but also government agencies. We've already had experience of working with MOE to do the cashless feeding program in schools with students. We've also got experiences working with Zakat. So Zakat's food basket, basically, some states have converted their physical food basket delivery into a cashless MyCard program. So basically, any agency that's involved in welfare or food basket programs and so on, I mean, we'd be happy to explore and work together to see how our technology can further assist them in the implementation of their programs. Then they could look at how else they could, do their other programs once more resources are available for that. So it's just a matter of working together. So our wish list is to work with more stakeholders that are involved in welfare distribution.
I think the cash transfer, how we deliver it is just the same. If under federal program, it's the same whether it's Semenanjung or Sabah Sarawak. But one unique that I can say is like social welfare is under the concurrent list in federal constitution. So both federal government and state government have the responsibility to this whatever the social welfare program. So yeah, I think federal do their part and the state government also, because it's stated in the federal constitution that it concurrent list. Yeah.
Thank you, Panadiba. We are quite out of time. We have two more questions from our audience online, and I believe the first one, I'll read out both questions so that you also have time to think. The first one is from Philip Kaur, I believe addressed to Hasbi, on cash transfers versus universal basic income. Are there simulations of the distributive effects of replacing the administrative mess of cash transfers with a UBI? Perhaps the question is referring to research or actual projects or pilots that have been run. And the next question, open to all our panelists. Do you think our cash transfer programs sufficiently take into account the informal income of households or individuals listed in databases? Informal income. Yes, short answer is yes. Okay, the consensus is yes.
I feel like this question might be more suitable for Marjan since she did the research.
Yeah.
But I think in general, I mean, universal basic income, it's more universal in terms of like everybody gets it, everybody get a fixed amount, completely unconditional. I mean, that's the intent of it, right? Whereas cash transfer is, it could still be UBI, but a lot of the ones that are implemented here is not is conditional. How? What was the question? Sorry.
Are there simulations of the distributive effects of replacing the administrative mess of cash transfers with a UBI?
I think there are studies, like I mentioned earlier, referencing the book Utopia for Realists. There are globally have been experiments on UBI, and in general, it has been successful in terms of like increase in well-being, increase in income, increase in improvement of education. But there's never been one that has been conducted here. We do have unconditional like BRIM, right? But I think it's too low. The amount is too low for us to say that it's something that is simulated here. So perhaps you can explore this, but obviously there's always the concern for the financial bit, where would this money come from? There are ways. I have opinions on that, but yeah, the short answer, it hasn't been simulated, and I think it'd be great to see if it's truly effective here for Malaysia, because it might be different, right? Those are, that links back to the wish list earlier. I do, a personal note, I do hope or wish that there are room for us to explore more experiments such as this, just to at least learn what are the impact for the community.
Yes, Marjan.
Yeah, I also want to add, so based on like international studies, for example, when you talk about like universal programs, atau do you want to give more targeted programs? So the argument would be, if you want to give targeted, you have a limited amount of money. So if you give a targeted program, then the idea is that money would be better utilized because you only give to specific people. So 1 million ringgit would go far if your target is only 100,000 people versus 1 million for everybody. But again, so it depends on your objective. So if your objective is to provide that money as fast as So it depends on your objective. So if your objective is to make sure that the poorest, you can reach the poorest, sometimes it depends on the context. Universal program can be better. It depends on your administrative capacity. So if you're okay, so giving example, Indonesia, for example, so they have something called Program Keluarga Harapan, not our harapan, their harapan. So from their program, when they do something called proxy means testing, so when you give bantuan, so it depends on what item you have. So you have a car, washing machine, so it depends. So that's how they measure whether or not someone is well off or not, right? But so they want to focus their efforts. They do very narrow poverty targeting. But because of that, when they did studies on what happened, so usually those that are the most vulnerable, those in the lowest income decile, they are the ones who tend to be excluded from the program. It's because sometimes it could be because they don't have access to those programs compared to those that are better off. So for example, if you are a bit better off, then you get it's easier for you to get information, for example. So it depends. So some countries, because they don't have that administrative capacity, then they just give universal program. But what that means is when you give universal program, everyone dapat, but the base can be low. So everyone dapat, but low base. But then once you get everyone in your system, then you can supplement your program. So again, this is a lot of conversation, something that we definitely can have that discussion more.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we'll be closing this session. I'm so sorry to those online, we could not take all of your questions, but please do keep in touch as well. So for today, we have actually spent a lot of time delving deeper into this topic, and one of the themes that has come up is also the question of whether the cash given will be used for its intended purpose. However, a great deal of evidence worldwide has shown that when people are given the choice to spend on what they need, they do know what is best that their household needs. And we've also discussed the current cash transfer models, especially the need to strengthen Malaysia's social assistance systems by reducing leakages with the use of technology, database coordination, and improved consolidation of all efforts. There's a need to foster partnerships as well, as we look forward to the introduction of new policies that support the social profession, especially coupled with long-term policies that tackle rapid population aging and labor markets. And all these factors play a part in ensuring the long-term sustainability of our nation's social protection system for future generations so that no one is left behind. So with that, thank you very much to our esteemed panelists. Let's give them a big hand for your insightful sharing today. And thanks also to our audience members, both here and online, for your participation and attendance. With that, I'll pass the time back to